Hello, and welcome to another edition of Spoken Voices. We hope that everybody is doing well. We hope that everybody is safe. We hope that everybody is doing medically well. And I say that because we have a new variant of COVID that came out recently. For the life of me, I can't think of the name of the new variant, but it's frustrating. And I know it's frustrating for everyone. Now, I know that we're probably tired after 2 years of dealing with this thing, but apparently the road is not done yet. We're probably still got a long way to go before we can even think about living like we used to, living normally like we used to live. But the only thing I can think of, as someone who cares about, of course, my own health and the health of my family, is to think about the health of other people too. So my only advice to those who want to hear it is to wear your mask, take the precaution that needs to be taken, and just look out for your fellow human being, your fellow man, fellow woman. It seems like this thing is getting a lot of children sick now too. Now apparently it's not. They said it's not as potent as the first variant that came out, but still, I don't think anyone wants to be sick, not even for a little while. And we're coming into 2022. I think everybody wants to have a good new year and a good year to follow. That being said, today's show is just about a few things that's caught my attention in the news, and that has me concerned about a few things. And again, this show is always about my opinion, and I hope that my opinion doesn't offend anyone. But again, it's my opinion. It's not a universal thought. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the sentencing of a young motorist that was sentenced to 110 years for an accident that he had, I think, 2 years ago. And he was sentenced for 110 years. Now, once they investigated, he wasn't drinking, he wasn't on drugs. His brakes went out on his tractor trailer, his 18-wheeler. Now, I believe 4 people were killed, and a lot of people was injured. It was a very bad crash. Now, my question is, sentencing seems to be going off the rails simply because there's no structure to it in a lot of states. Now, should he do time for the deaths of the people that he ran into and he caused this accident? Probably, especially if he knew that his brakes wasn't working. But 110 years for an accident sets the precedent for something really bad, because if you're going to do that, what about the average accident that someone has if their brakes go out or if their car is not working correctly and they didn't know, and they cause a tragic accident that takes someone's life? We're kind of like pushing ourselves through the wall, and if we let this sit, if this doesn't change, then we are putting ourselves in a position where people can be sentenced for life for an accident that they didn't, know was going to happen and didn't do intentionally. So it's very important that we keep abreast of these things, because we never know when these things may affect us or a family member. It's easy to look at a news story and say, well, it's tragic, or hail something that you believe is a good decision and stuff like that. It's all well and good until it happens to you, until it happens to your family or someone in your family or a friend or a close friend. So I always think it's important, and I know a lot of people don't pay attention to a lot of stuff that's going on because they're going about their daily lives. They're going about, living the way they want to live and having a good time in their life. But sometimes it's good to take a look at what's going on, because you never know, eventually, the way the world works, it may affect you. And these are the things that we can get involved with. We can basically talk to people. It's very easy to call your state legislation and speak to someone about a law, something that's going on that you don't understand or that you don't agree with. It's very easy to get on the phone and do that and participate and be a part of what's going on in the world. Again, I thought that was a tragic thing. It was tragic all around. There's no winners in this thing. But it was something that I thought was really important, and something that, if you have the time, you can Google it and see what's, what had really happened. The second thing that I wanted to speak about, last week, there was a little girl in Los Angeles that was shot while she was in the dressing room of a store. Now, what happened, apparently there was some crazy person going around with a bike chain, beating and hitting women with it. The police were called, and if I recall correctly, the call was made with shots fired. So they assumed that the person that they were going to encounter had a gun, but he didn't. He had a bike chain, and I think we all know what a bike chain is. They're pretty thick and pretty heavy, and he was doing a lot of damage to the people that the women that he was hitting. But it was a bike chain, so it wasn't a gun, and they responded. Apparently, they responded and they found the guy, and he still had the bike chain, and I think he had hit another woman. And apparently, at some point, they opened fire on this person. Now, I think there was 3 or 4 officers that opened fire on him. So they shot and killed this perpetrator. But one of the stray bullets went through a wall and hit a young woman, a young girl, who was trying on a dress for a 16th birthday party. And it killed her. And I believe her mother was in the dressing room with her at the time. And my question is this. Policing, again, I'd done a show about policing before. I don't understand, for the life of me, and maybe it's just me, I don't understand, once you see there is no gun involved, once you see that there is no one shooting, the weapon that this person had was a bike chain. It wasn't a gun or an automatic rifle. My question is, why was guns drawn and shots fired when the person that's perpetrating the crime did not have a gun? And if that could have been avoided by putting your guns away and using other force to subdue the person who was committing this crime. I don't know what training for police is. I know what training for corrections is because I was a correction officer. And again, I always say this, we never had the luxury of having a weapon with people who were basically sentenced individuals as inmates. Some sentenced for crimes that were heinous, that they didn't care about, doing deadly harm to us as correction officers. But that's beside the point. When you do have options, and this is true in life, period, when you do have options, isn't it important that you use those options instead of going to one thing constantly? If your mind tells you as a police officer that my first line of defense is to grab my weapon, going off course a little bit here, last year, I believe, or year before last, there was an officer who shot and killed a guy at a traffic stop because he had a warrant out for his arrest. And she thought, and he resisted. They found out, they told him they were going to put him in cuffs and arrest him and bring him down to the station. He resisted, which was stupid in itself, of course, but he resisted. There's 3 officers, 2 males, 1 female. She mistook her gun, her Glock, for a taser. and she shot and killed this young man. I can never understand. First of all, I can't understand how you mistake a gun for a Glock for a taser. Tasers are very light. They're most of the time yellow and black, so they're bright, so you don't make the mistake. They're also placed on your body at a different position than your firearm. This woman, I think, was a police officer for 20-something years, and she still made the mistake. She shot him 3 times, I believe. My thing is, once that first shot is shot, you should have known what you just heard was a firearm going off. So anyway, they shot him. He gets in the car and drives up the street. Another thing I can never understand. If a person is in their car and they decide they want to resist and not go into custody, and they run away from you, jump in their car and go down the street. My question is, why would you shoot at this person unless they have a firearm themselves and they're shooting back at you? Why not just, all right, you're in the car. They're gone. Get in your car and follow them. And if there's 3 officers and 1 skinny kid, what training don't you have to restrain someone without using deadly force? You know, the thing is, and I guess that's coming from a correction officer perspective. You know, we did cell extractions on people that basically we had to use our hands. We had shields, of course, but nothing in our hands. We had no batons or tasers or anything like that. We had to basically go in there and grab these huge individuals and bring them out of the cell, handcuff them, and do what we needed to do. What I cannot understand in free space, where you have the luxury of having all this equipment, the baton, the taser, pepper spray, all these other items that you could use to subdue an unarmed individual, why does it always have to come back to someone pulling their weapon and shooting someone? It is amazing to me. And I think it goes back to training. But it also goes back to the individuals that are being brought in, that get through the academy, that maybe need to go through a more stringent psychological profiling, that are becoming police officers. We in this country truly believe, and it's a good and a bad thing, that the police are great people. Great people. If you're a police officer, if you put on that uniform and you walk these streets, you must be a good person. And I think that's a misconception, because everybody has their flaws. And there are good cops that I know, that I have relationships with, and there are bad cops. And we know that's to be true. Yet, as a country, we look at police officers and we don't fully understand the power that they have and what they don't have. And the sad thing about it for me is that a lot of times the police officers themselves believe they have the ultimate power: judge, jury, executioner. And it bothers me. What bothers me about this young girl being killed, and for me, just as an individual looking at this and being able to say, okay, if the guy didn't have a gun, how can I, as a police officer, how can I subdue this guy without using deadly force? First of all, I'm in a department store, right? Or let's say it's on the street. It's on a Manhattan street where it's busy. If I start shooting with my gun, there's always a possibility of me hitting an innocent person. And if a person doesn't have a weapon, what stops me from being able to subdue this person, handcuff them, take them into custody? If that's a problem with me as a police officer, I know I should not be a police officer. If I can't figure this out, if 3 officers can't figure this out, a guy has a bike chain. This crazy person was hitting somebody with a bike chain. There is no way in the world 4 cops cannot get that away from me. Even if you take a hit yourself with the bike chain, if you're scared of being hurt as a police officer, corrections, state trooper, anything that deals with someone that you have to have a confrontation with eventually, if you're scared, don't be a police officer. Don't get into law enforcement whatsoever, because there's always that possibility that something may happen to you. But there's probably a less chance of something happening to you if the person doesn't have a gun. There was another incident where a guy was supposedly stole something out of a store, and he was in a wheelchair, but he also had a knife. A police officer confronted this gentleman as he was going back into the store. He walked along the side of his wheelchair. And the guy did have a knife. It was visible. The officer then drew his gun, shot this guy about 6 times in the back. In the back. I looked at the video and asked myself again, what in the world are you thinking? The guy is in a wheelchair. Yes, he has a knife. You have a gun, taser, baton, anything. There was a myriad of things you could have done, and pulling your gun should have been the very last thought in your head. It wasn't a guy rushing after you with a knife or ambushing you with a knife. There was a guy in a wheelchair going about 2 miles an hour. You could have kicked over the wheelchair, knocked him on the ground, waited for backup and said, you know, while I do this, whatever. Have a plan. But now there's a child that is missing because an officer's gun fired at a guy with a bike chain and shot through the wall of a dressing room. This has got to stop. Either we need to retrain these guys, these guys that are police officers, send them through the academy and have better training, better thought process. I mean, how do you, if you're in this situation, here's the scenario, you're in this situation, what is your first response? And every officer that says, I'll draw my gun and shoot, if someone is not armed, should not be police officers. There's got to be better training, because everybody is at risk. And for all of us who do respect the badge, who do respect the position, for all those who are adamant about it, for all those, you know, there's those people who think that police are the best, man. You can't get any better than a police officer. You need to start thinking that these police officers are human beings. They are not above reproach. They are not omnipotent. They are not brought here by some higher power to oversee us. They are human beings who take a job and get paid for it to protect us. On every police vehicle that's out here, it says to serve and protect. Not to use deadly force because I don't feel like being bothered with getting physical with someone. It's becoming very frightening. If you have a father, a mother, a son, a daughter, grandkids, you should be afraid. If your grandkid or your father or whatever gets stopped by a police on the street, you want to hope that police has the common sense, the common decency for his fellow human being, not to say, I will make your life, first of all, I'll make your life miserable just because I'm having a bad day, or that I am so afraid, I am so scared every time I talk to someone, every time I have an interaction with the average Joe on the street, that my first thought is to get home that night and eliminate the threat that is in front of me by shooting them. You can eliminate a threat by talking to a person. You can eliminate a threat by de-escalating the situation. Again, as a CO, as a correction officer, I had to de-escalate through my voice, through reason with another individual. And it's kind of hard to reason with an individual that's saying, all right, I'm looking at life in prison, but I'm going to listen to you while I'm in this building that I will never get out of again. It's kind of hard to get them to understand, you know, there's a cause and effect for anything you do, even if you're in here for the rest of your life. What I hope happens is that the powers that be, the commissioners in all these cities, in New York and Connecticut and everything, I hope we get to the point where we look at it and say enough is enough. Enough is enough. Yes, we must protect our law enforcement. We have to. But we also must protect the people that they're supposed to protect. We are not an armed and for the most part, we're not an armed country. It's not like you're every person that you interact with as a police officer is going to be armed and coming after you and hate you and, you know, and you feel disrespected. At the end of the day, have thicker skin. Be able to take an insult, you know. Again, I've been called, and when I worked, I was called everything but the Son of God. I couldn't just tee off on everybody just because my feelings were hurt. And if you're a police officer and you have soft feelings and your skin is very thin and you can't take the fact that someone may say something derogatory towards you and you feel that you have to, you know, retaliate against someone because they said something that you didn't like, don't be a cop. It takes a special person to be law enforcement. It takes a special mentality. It's a special thing to put on that uniform. And when innocent people like this little girl is dead because of incompetence, because of someone looking at someone else with a bike chain and decided to unload a gun at this person, that person needs to reevaluate themselves doing this job. And again, please don't take this as me being anti-police. I wore a blue uniform and I put my life on the line every day when I was a CO. I understand the job. You know, I'm prejudiced. I think that my job was a little bit more difficult because I didn't have the, you know, I didn't have the belt to put on with all the gadgets and gadgets that the police officers had. I had to be able to use my voice, or I had to be able to fight, one or the other, for my life. So I put a little bit more pressure on them because they do have the leeway. I said this before, I'm gonna say this again. Policing, community policing, get to know your neighborhood. Get to know the people in your neighborhood. Get your asses out of the car, walk the streets, talk to people, as opposed to sitting in your car, on your phone, or talking to one another. You should feel the need to know who you're policing. Policing does not mean getting in a car driving around the blocks over and over again. I would think that would be boring. Every person that has a store, you should go in, have a conversation with the guys on the street, have a conversation with if there's drug dealers and whatnot, get to know them. Get to know what's going on. Talk to everybody. Don't think, I tell you the absolute truth. I'm beginning to think that a lot of police officers believe they're above this. They're above those people that they're supposed to serve and protect. That's a bad precedent to start, because you stop looking at those people as people. Let me tell you something. I have a lot of police officers that are friends of mine that said the last thing that they ever wanted to do was take their gun out of their holsters. I feel a lot of the young officers that's coming onto the scene now, That's the first thing they're thinking about. Ooh, I can't wait. Ooh, I can't wait to be able, if a situation comes where I have to pull my gun. Those people should never be police officers. And again, if you get thin skin, if you feel that you can't take being insulted, you know, being cursed at, don't be a cop. Everybody doesn't love you, and they never will. Because a lot of people out here are doing dirt, and you're the last person they want to see. But your job is to serve and protect, not put us at risk, not take our loved ones from us because you can't handle the job and you're a coward. And I need us to be able to look at that and as people and say, enough is enough. It hurt my soul to even to know that this child was even killed like that, because it wasn't necessary at all. And I would like to end this by saying this again. Make no mistake about it. I am pro-police. I'm pro-good police, though. There should always be good police. Get out of your car and do community policing. We'd like to thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being with Spoken Voices. And as I always say, man makes plan, God smiles. Please have a good and safe new year. Take care. Bye-bye.